Okay, Steve, we're going to get started with the teardown of your watch. So, here we go. The best movement holder for these watches is actually the case. So I usually start by taking some of the upper parts off while it's still in here. And I work my way down until I get to a point where I take the movement out of the case, and then I can remove the hands and other things. Now what's interesting about your watch is, of course, this is your watch. You have informed me that you purchased this new in 1975, which is just a fantastic bit of history. I love that aspect of things like watches and other items that people keep for long periods of time. And this is a really interesting example of that, and I really appreciate you allowing me to work on it. Alright, so here we go. So now what we can do is we can go ahead and remove some of the pieces, but I'm going to take the case out, the watch out of the case. So there's your movement retaining ring. That comes out. Once that comes out, then your pushers come out, you can see. And here are the seals, for example, that those pushers have in them. They turn to like a glass, actually, as a polymer person who knows something about polymers. Vulcanized rubber will eventually turn into a glass over time, and that's what these do. They are literally glassy. Okay, that one's ready to come out. Okay, so now we get your stem out. I'm going to put that aside, and you got another seal here on your stem. That will be replaced. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and take down the power from your mainspring here. There's quite a bit of power in there. That was good. We got it wound pretty well. You should see your balance wind down. So we know we've removed the power. Okay, so now let's go ahead and take it out of the case. And there we go. Alright, we're going to clean up your case, get that in the bath. Look at that dial. It's just perfect. I mean, these watches, a lot of them succumb to moisture because these seals didn't last forever. And in a sense, there's a benefit of being stored away for a long time, because now it's really in great shape. So we're going to do our best to keep it that way. Wow, what a great watch. I'll check something really quickly here. All right. All right, let's go ahead and remove your dial and hands. Use a bit of a protection here. Keep the hand removing tool from touching your dial. It's a sensitive thing, so you don't want to push on it, even though the removing tool is made from something very easy. You still don't want to ruin the dial. All right, here we go. Chronograph. There's your minute hand, and as you can see here, we're seeing a bit of rust underneath your minute hand on top of your dial, or your hour hand. That's generally from water intruding in and condensing. And what happens, and you may have noticed this with other watches in the past, but if water condenses, and you can see that on the inside of your crystal, it generally pools towards the center of the crystal, and then it drips. And when it drips right onto the this stack of gears that's up here, and we'll get it cleaned up. Hopefully it's not something that's going to lead to issues, but certainly we want to address that. We definitely want to address that. A few small pieces of rust got onto your dial here. Just want to make sure those don't have any lasting impact. Okay, we're going to have to look pretty close at that. Those two are supposed to be clean and not, of course, not touched by rust, but we'll see. We'll see how it comes out. Okay, there's your minute hand. Here's your Here we go. Okay. Let's go ahead and move these to a safe place. Okay. Very nice. All right, let's go ahead and remove your dial. The great thing about removing the dial is you get to see some of the history of the watch when you do that. And so you know when this watch was made, but a lot of times there are questions about history and provenance of a piece. And what you get from under the dial is the date, month and day of manufacture of the dial. And that usually corresponds to the same general time frame as the back of the case date, which is on yours. I think it's July of 74, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, 747. So year first, and then so if your case back says 47, the back of your dial should be about a month before, which here is 46. So that's June of 74, which is 100% consistent. So that's a nice feature. Okay, get your dial put away. All right, so here's the top of your watch. This is your calendar side, as we call it, because all of your calendar components are here. It's also, there's also parts of your chronograph function, because this is a 6138. Chronograph has an extra wheel, and that wheel is powered in a sub plate below the calendar side, which is different from the 6139s, which only have the minute counting wheel and not the hour counting wheel as well. Okay, so now we start disassembling. That's really clean. That's really nice. Other than these two tiny spots of rust here, I think we're in pretty good shape. Okay, so here we start. Let's take it off of this. Let's go ahead and start with your train side. Jewels. These are your dia shock settings. Protects your balance from shocks. Let's see what is under here. Boy, that is very old lubricant that has remained in place. Amazing. Amazing. Very cool. Okay, let's go ahead and remove your balance. Set that aside, have a look. How it looks pretty good from here though. Okay, let's go and take your pallet fork. This is the component that gives you your tick-tock of your watch. Tick-tock, tick-tock. This has a set of jeweled stones that are part of what's known as the lever escapement mechanism. Looks pretty good. All right. Okay, so now what we need to do is remove your chronograph components on this side of the train. These are not loose, but also not tight in the sense that they are certainly screws that have been in the movement since day one, but have probably loosened over time due to the fact that they are, they have lived a life in the watch, and the watch was worn. So I'm looking at this bushing right here, inside of here, to just kind of get a sense of how much you set your chronograph. Yeah, it's pushed out a bit. So it's not a major thing. It's just when the reset of the chronograph happens, you get a large lateral push on this bushing right here, and it distorts it over time. Okay, let's take intermediate wheel, put that in the container. Here's your minute recording wheel. Sometimes those come apart over time, but that one is still together and in good shape. Okay, so here are your chronograph components. Here's your reset, or your lever spring. hammer spring. Very good shape. Here's your hammer. This resets your chronograph components back to straight up and down. Okay, let's go ahead and snap your levers here. Very good. Let those separate. Okay. So that is definitely tight. Okay. One lever. Two levers. Now we take off your column wheel here. This is the component that operates your chronograph features. Here we go. Comes off, and you've got a bushing here that sits on that post. Good. Okay, so now we can take off your chronograph bridge. That one's definitely loose. Okay, so let's go ahead and take off your ratchet wheel. And your click springy spring. Okay. Now, it should lift off. Looks good. Okay, now we're at the heart of it. This is your train of wheels. Here's your gear for setting power into the mainspring. There's your fantastically expensive chronograph wheel. If that fails, it's basically the cost of a movement. It looked pretty good. There's your third wheel. Here's your escape wheel. It's part of the tick-tock mechanism again. Every time that lever goes tick, 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 it engages with this wheel, and that advances the time of the watch, or advances the power from the mainspring through the movement. There's your mainspring. Arbor. That has a mainspring inside of it, and this travels through and actually operates part of your chronograph. That's what that extra gear is there. Okay, so last piece on this side. There we go. And we leave that in place until we take the other side apart. Okay, and now let's flip it over with that part of the train taken care of. Now we can move on to the calendar side and start with that. All right, first thing to come off for your day wheel. Oops. This is held on by a little C-clip here. There we go. Eval, English, Spanish. Alright, now take a really close look here at your cannon pinions. Okay, so now we are at the two plates that are part of your date. Wheel. So there are two little plates here, held down by 4 screws. All right. And now we can take off your wheel. There we go. Set that aside. There's your spring for advancement. And now we get to take off your I call this this piece right here. It reminds me of the Millennium Falcon. So that's what I call it. It's the Millennium Falcon piece. And your finger. And your wheel. And there we go. Okay, that's your calendar side torn down. I'm going to go ahead and take off this plate. So this plate is what covers up your hour recording wheel components, and it's quite a number of them actually. It's a pretty complicated little piece of engineering. To add one more registry or register to the chronograph feature, it actually ends up with an entirely new set of pieces that are for this particular movement. The nice part about this is that Seiko put a jewel at the lower part of the mainspring arbor to make sure that it stayed in place because it's on a separate plate. So the mainspring actually travels through the main plate onto a secondary plate, which is here, and they had to jewel that, which means that it's a much more robust movement, which is nice. Okay, so here are your components for your essentially one piece of your chronograph. Okay, so that is stuck. We'll have to deal with that. Oh yeah. So that we'll have to take a very close look at our cannon pinion, which is pretty rusty. Okay, so that might have to go in a rust remediator. It has gotten, just from moisture in the watch over time, it leads to issues like this. So, alright, we'll have to deal with that. Might have to locate you a cannon pinion. Unfortunately, this is a very unique cannon pinion to this watch because it's so long. I may not have one in stock, and so I might have to source one. There's the minute-hour recording wheel. Okay, we've got a number of springs we have to deal with here. There's one. Some levers. Here's a reset lever component. That's very interesting. So factory setting is that this should point right to the center of that hole, which it does, because your watch has never been fiddled with over its lifetime. And so it is in its right position. There's another lever. Quite a number of parts and components for this. Here's your minute wheel. And this one, I don't know why I give these components weird nicknames, but this one I call the Cocopelli. It looks like a dancing thing. Okay. Here's your lever. All right. Now the last couple things here are your calendar side die shock. Go ahead and take that apart. Pop that out. And your keyless works. And your quick date change for your day and date. Again, quite a number of components here. This was a bit of a hybrid. It had DNA from other Seiko movements in this rapid date change set of components here. It's so interesting how many interchangeable pieces there were between different 6000 series models. But this one is a little bit of an older variety just because it has a number of springs that are not like the 6139s, because it also has a quick date and winding for the keyless works. So you gotta be a little bit careful here. Got some springs you don't want to lose, and they can go flying to the other ends of the world if you're not careful. So there's that spring. And your one little piece here for holding that spring. There's your. All right. And with that, keyless works is apart. And your gears. Now for the last piece. I'm going to save this for last because I want to look at it, just what kind of shape it was in. So here is your cannon pinion and your center wheel. Let's put that over here. Now that is a bit rough, I have to admit. I was not expecting that. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to soak this in some derusting agent, see if I can salvage it. If I can't, we will have to come up with something else, but hopefully I can clean it by hand and then it'll be okay as well. Your center wheel has not suffered so much in terms of issues, so that should clean up just fine. But this, I'm a bit concerned. So we will try our best to salvage this part. It's not that it's impossible to find, it's just that it takes time. And I'd like to be sure we get your watch back in a timely way. Okay. So that's it. Now we go to the cleaner and we get cleaned. Okay, Steve, well, here's your watch. This is the IKEA version, some assembly required. So here are all your components. Here's your movement on this side. These are your case components and your some of the other pieces that I keep separate. Those I'm going to move back to their safe place where they get to reside until we get all your parts back in. But what I wanted to do was sort of go through, and again, here's your dial in your hands and all the things that I like to keep safe and separate. Your case cleaned up really quite well. I had shown you an image or two, but I just wanted to go through the details here. And this case is pretty unique for this particular watch. There are 3000X series of the Jumbo, and you have a 3005. And the 3005 has this cool little cutout for the overhang of your bezel here. This pops into place and holds your crystal in place. Your crystal, it turns out, has come apart a bit, and so let me show you the details of that a little bit. So here's your original crystal on your watch, and you can see it's got some marring and scratching and things, but most importantly, and this isn't, you know, this isn't a big deal, but this has come delaminated from this metal ring that holds your crystal in place, generally, which is what it's supposed to do. And then this goes against the seal of the watch, so it goes in here with a seal. Now, we can replace all of this. I do have a glass on the way, a couple glasses, so I'm going to figure out which one's the best one and use that. And I also have a complete unit option that we're going to look at as well. The thing I'm trying to do is match this as best I can, so that even though it's not really all that visible, it is a matter of taste and form. That's going to have to sit proud a little bit of the surface of that bezel. But we will get to that point later. The only thing that I am concerned about a little bit here is that if you look here, there was some moisture that got in beyond the seal, mostly because this glass, I think, had gotten cracked at some point. So you can see at this point right here, the glass, and that's where it touches that metal bezel, that has gotten cracked. And that came off in two pieces when I took the crystal out of the watch. This was already delaminated, so it had already, the glue had already started to separate. But when I took it apart, you can see that that crack led to a few issues that I want to just point out. These are not functional issues. These are simply cosmetic, but not in a way that you'll ever really notice. I don't know if you can see this white edging here. That's a bit of, this is apparently, I think, either aluminum or some sort of metal that has interacted with this ring that led to some light pitting and loss of material. I do not want to take this any further than where it is right now. I will try a little bit to clean up that little edge right there, but I'm not going to go much further than this, simply because it will not really be noticeable, for one, and second, you don't want to try and damage, do more damage than good by manipulating this piece. These are, easily broken, and I don't want to screw it up. So we're going to leave that as it is, and here's your amazing bracelet, the original bracelet. And like I said in my email, your eye, maybe you'll pick that up. I can try and bring some of that scratching out, but I just don't think it's really worth it. It's such a great watch the way it is. Your end links look fantastic. Everything just looks so good. Anyway, so that's where we are. We're waiting on some parts. We will start to reassemble once everything's in house, and we'll get you going. Okay, stay tuned for the next installment. Thanks, Steve.